Welcome. Today we're going to investigate how to find our highest expression of anger. Now, anger is probably not my favorite topic to talk about. When I was growing up, anger wasn't something that was necessarily expressed in the way we would think about. And I think that's true for a lot of us. We don't talk about anger much in our society other than the most extreme examples of anger. And as a result of that, most of us feel like we're in a state of shame or being a bad person if we ever feel anything that feels remotely like anger. Especially as a woman, we often get taught not to be angry, that it's not acceptable for girls to be angry. Now, this can apply to men as well, absolutely, but it's insidious in how we raise our little girls. So we often don't explore anger, and we often don't think about it as being a high expression of ourselves or being able to have sacred anger when we're actually able to own our anger. It gets labeled as a bad emotion. And I'd like to challenge us in thinking that there aren't any bad emotions, but there for sure are uncomfortable emotions. And for myself, anger would be one of those uncomfortable emotions. Anytime we have an uncomfortable emotion, we will do almost anything to avoid that rather than investigating it. But anger can actually be an incredible teacher for us. It often tells us when our boundaries have been crossed. It often tells us when we actually know that our answer is no. This can show up in many, many different ways, and we tend to avoid it rather than investigating it. If we were to investigate anger as a teacher, we can then allow it to be in our bodies and then move out of our bodies as quickly as it came. When we have shame around our anger, or we feel like we're bad people for having our anger, what that does is it rises within us and then we shove it down as quickly as we possibly can to avoid that uncomfortable feeling. But what I'd like you to do instead is recognize anger for anger. Practice naming it as anger. Naming it as anger doesn't mean we need to express it. Anger doesn't need to look like punching walls or yelling or throwing things. Anger can be a recognition of how it feels in our body and that something isn't right. And in that way, it does teach us to know that something isn't right. Think about it like an early warning alert system that tells us something is off before we maybe even know it's off. So I'd like you to reflect on a time recently where you have felt anger. And I'd like you to just think about it and investigate it and nurture that feeling a little bit more. Seeing it as a teacher, seeing it as holding information that might be necessary to keep us safe and happy. And then also really pay attention to when anger arises for you and you do label yourself as a bad person for having it. This is something we all have to work at to unlearn, because at the end of the day, we are all going to get angry. We all have anger, but that doesn't mean we need to take our anger out on others or out on ourselves. Thank you for spending your time with me today. I'd love it if you gave some reflection on this as to how anger shows up in your life. If you found this helpful, please like and subscribe. And if you have any requests for future videos, please leave them in the comments below. Have a beautiful day.